This is the story of Afghanistan, a place where empires go to die, but also where people have always survived. And what you're about to hear will completely change how you look at global power, resilience, and the human cost of ambition. Let's go back, way back. Afghanistan's story doesn't start with war or occupation. It starts with mountains. Towering, jagged ranges that carved this land into isolated valleys and pockets of civilization. That geography, that's why Afghanistan, has always been hard to conquer and impossible to hold. Humans first passed through this rugged terrain around 50,000 years ago. Thousands of years later, it became a crucial stop on the Silk Road, that vast ancient network of trade routes linking China to the Mediterranean. Merchants, monks, and warriors passed through, leaving languages, religions, and cultures still echoing through Afghan cities and villages today. Now, fast forward to the 6th century BCE, when the Achaemenid Empire, you might know it as ancient Persia, took control. They weren't the last. Next came Alexander the Great in 330 BCE. He stormed through Afghanistan with his armies, capturing cities, marrying local women, and leaving behind a strange Greek-Kafkan fusion of culture. But even Alexander, the so-called unstoppable conqueror, couldn't truly tame Afghanistan. His men faced resistance at every turn, and his rule barely lasted a few years. After that, chaos, fragmentation. Then the rise of local kingdoms, Greco-Bactrians, Kushans, and the Hephthalites. Some of these names you've probably never heard before, and that's kind of the point. Afghanistan's history is so full of layers and forgotten empires that even historians struggle to keep track. Let's pause here, because something incredible happened in the 7th century that changed everything. Islam arrived. Arab armies brought it with them, and while there was resistance, over time, much of the region adopted the new religion. But this wasn't just a conversion by sword. Afghanistan absorbed Islam, but on its own terms, mixing it with older beliefs, customs, and languages. That's something you'll see over and over again. Afghanistan never just takes outside influence. It reshapes it by the 10th century. Powerful Islamic empires like the Ghaznavids and the Ghurids emerged from Afghan soil. These were no minor players. They sent armies into India, built incredible cities like Ghazni and Herat, and turned Afghanistan into a cultural and political powerhouse. Then came the Mongols. In the 13th century, Genghis Khan's forces swept through. And when Genghis Khan comes to your door, you don't survive. Cities were leveled, populations wiped out. It was brutal. But again, Afghanistan endured. And not long after, new powers emerged like the Timurids in the 14th century. Herat, under their rule, became a center of art, science, and poetry. It was one of the great cities of the Islamic world. Let that sink in, while Europe was still crawling out of the Dark Ages. Afghan cities were producing some of the most beautiful manuscripts and scientific works in the world. But peace never lasted long. By the 16th century, the Safavids in Iran and the Mughals in India were both looking to claim Afghan territory. And for the next few hundred years, Afghanistan was the football in a deadly game between bigger powers. But something was changing. Local tribes, especially the Pashtuns, were getting tired of being pawns. And in 1747, a man named Ahmad Shah Durrani rose up. He's known today as the founder of modern Afghanistan. A skilled warrior and political genius, he united various tribes and created a kingdom that stretched from eastern Iran to northern India. For the first time, Afghanistan wasn't just a place others wanted, was its own power. Ahmad Shah's dynasty ruled for almost a century. But things started to fall apart in the early 1800s, and that's when the British showed up. Let's be real, this is the part most people have heard about. The British Empire, at the height of its power, wanted to protect India from Russian expansion. Afghanistan was the buffer. But instead of negotiating, the British decided to invade. Big mistake. In 1839, the First Anglo-Afghan War began. The British installed a puppet king in Kabul, thinking they had one. But Afghan resistance fears, local and unstoppably erupted. By 1842, almost the entire British force, over 16,000 soldiers and camp followers, was annihilated during their retreat from Kabul. Only one man made it back alive to tell the story. The message was clear: Afghanistan would not be ruled. But the British tried again. The Second Anglo-Afghan War started in 1878. This time, they managed to install a friendly ruler and secure some diplomatic influence. But they never truly controlled Afghanistan, and that fear of outside domination. It became part of Afghan identity. By the early 20th century, the world was changing again. In 1919, after World War I, Afghanistan declared full independence from British influence. The Third Anglo-Afghan War was short, but it cemented Afghan sovereignty. Under King Amanullah Khan, the country tried to modernize new schools, a constitution, and more rights for women. But change came too fast for some. His reforms sparked backlash, and by the 1930s, a more conservative monarchy took over. Now we enter the Cold War era. The US and the Soviet Union were looking for allies everywhere. And Afghanistan got caught in the middle again. In the 1950s and 60s, Afghanistan accepted aid from both sides. Roads, dams, and universities were built. Kabul became known as the Paris of Central Asia. Life was looking up, but in 1973, the monarchy was overthrown. A republic was formed, but that didn't last long either. In 1978, a communist coup took over, and that's when things really spiraled. The new communist government tried to push radical reforms, including land redistribution and gender equality. But they did it brutally. Many Afghans saw them as godless oppressors. Resistance groups known as the Mujahideen began to rise, and in 1979, the Soviet Union invaded to support the failing communist regime. For the next 10 years, Afghanistan became a war zone. The US, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and others funded the Mujahideen. It was a proxy war, and Afghans paid the price. Over 1 million Afghans died. Millions more fled. The country was shattered. In 1989, the Soviets pulled out. And you'd think maybe that would mean peace, right? The communist regime held on for a few more years, but by 1992, it collapsed. Then came the civil war. Warlords took control of different regions. Chaos reigned, and out of that chaos came the Taliban. In 1996, they captured Kabul and established a strict Islamic regime. Music was banned. Women couldn't go to school. Public executions became normal. It was one of the harshest governments in the world. And then came 9/11s. After the attacks in the US, the Taliban refused to hand over Osama bin Laden. In response, the US invaded Afghanistan in 2001. The Taliban fell quickly. A new Afghan government was formed with international support. Billions of dollars poured in. Schools reopened. The girls went back to class. Hope returned. But so did corruption, inefficiency, and the constant threat of insurgency. The Taliban never really went away. They regrouped in Pakistan, launched attacks, and slowly regained ground. The war dragged on for 20 years. In 2021, the US and its allies withdrew. And within weeks, the Taliban returned to power. Afghanistan was back to square one, or so it seemed. But here's the truth. Afghanistan is never just one thing. It's not just a war zone or a graveyard of empires. It's also poetry, architecture, music, resilience, and pride. It's young girls secretly going to school. It's families planting crops in bombed-out fields. It's artists painting over Taliban slogans with colors and dreams. It's nomads guiding flocks through valleys that haven't changed in 1,000 years. It's tea houses filled with storytellers passing on oral history that no book can capture. It's a country of contradictions, of ancient traditions coexisting with cell phones and satellite dishes. It's the courage of a mother sending her child to a hidden school. It's the strength of a farmer rebuilding his village after the fifth time it was destroyed. It's the whispered poetry that survives behind closed doors even when the world outside silences it. And that's why Afghanistan matters. Because despite everything, every empire, every war, every betrayal, its people are still there, still fighting, still hoping, living. So the next time someone calls it hopeless, remember this: Afghanistan has never been hopeless. It's been surviving and evolving for thousands of years. And that's something no empire has ever been able to kill. Subscribe for more stories you didn't learn in school.